Whites have wrapped up their international window, at least until the end of the year. They took part in a tournament labelled the Canadian Shield. Now, this took place in Toronto at the field where the FIFA World Cup games will be staged in Canada. Remember, the US, Canada, and Mexico triple hosting next year's World Cup. And they took on the 25th ranked Ukraine and also the 41st ranked Ivory Coast, picking up a 1-0 win over Ivory Coast, but then going down to Ukraine. But overall, very promising window for the All Whites, and of course, as I said, they're not back into action until the next international window, which comes, like I said, towards the end of the year. As I'm Nick from Nickn'detail, and today I'm going to be reviewing the All Whites performances in the recent international window at the Canadian Shield. So let's get into it. That's right, at the end of last year, well, at least towards the end of last year, it was announced that the All Whites would take part in this 3-team tournament in Toronto. Now, of course, Toronto is the city in Canada that will be hosting the FIFA World Cup games for Canada at their BMO field. And of course, this time next year, in fact, today next year is when the FIFA World Cup for 2026 kicks off. And the All Whites, as part of this 3-team tournament, will take on the Ivory Coast, ranked 41st in the world, and they take on the 25th ranked Ukraine. And of course, that all kick-started over the weekend and finished up the other day. So what are my thoughts on the All Whites performances in this window? It was actually pretty promising signs for the All Whites, considering they're ranked very much well below these teams and very much the 80th ranking spots. It's always going to be a tough task for the All Whites to take on these sides ranked very much highly above them. But their first game up against the Ivory Coast, and a team, like I said, ranked very much above them, but also a quality team as well. The team that just recently won the African Cup of Nations last year. So a side that are very much the best in Africa and very much deserving of their ranking in FIFA. This was, of course, updated as of April this year. So, of course, a few months have passed since then. And likely in the next few months, we'll see an updated rankings, particularly as we head towards the World Cup area. But the All Whites putting on a 1-0 win in this game. Very scrappy game this was. Actually a very tight game. In fact, both teams having their sets of chances in this game. But the All Whites coming out 1-0 winners there, with Eli just scoring that winning goal in the second half. And a very good performance from the All Whites to shut down a very good Ivory Coast team and get that 1-0 win. And then, of course, their next game was against the 25th ranked Ukraine, who, of course, have also got some big players of their own playing in Europe. I think the likes of Alexander Sachenko playing for Arsenal in the English Premier League, but also you got the likes of Andre Lunin, their goalkeeper, who, of course, plays for European powerhouse Real Madrid. You've got some pretty decent players in that Ukrainian team. So once again, another big step up from what the Ivory Coast gave them. But the All Whites again showed really good signs of what they can do against these higher ranked opponents. But it would be Ukraine. They would come out 2-1 winners at the end. Even though a disappointing result for the All Whites, it was still a great performance from the Kiwis to very much show they can be competitive with teams that are ranked, 50, 60 places higher than them in the FIFA rankings. And once again, very promising signs. As I said, of course, this stadium will host the Canada games at the FIFA World Cup, and of course, in the same conditions and the same atmosphere as it likely will be come, this time next year. So I think a very good test for the All Whites to play at that stadium that will be hosting the World Cup in this time next year, and playing teams that are very much going to be in the FIFA World Cup likely as well. I think it's a great test for them coming into the 2026 tournament. And I think overall, even though, of course, the win wasn't, obviously a big win, but the loss also wasn't, obviously it was still a loss. But at the same time, I think for the All Whites to be able to put these fights to these big teams, I think is a very good sign for them going forward that this team is showing promising, steps in the right direction heading into next year's World Cups. Overall, I think a good performance from the All Whites. In fact, getting the win as well was a pretty big achievement as well. I think the last time they bet a team that highly credible was back in 2019, 2020 when they faced Bahrain in friendlies, of course, during the COVID eras in Qatar before their World Cup qualification for that tournament. So very much a long time coming since the All Whites have been able to beat a quite highly ranked FIFA team, man. I think overall, even though losing to the Ukraine, this is a team ranked very much 60-odd places above them. I think, once again, it's a great sign that they can really take the competition to these teams. So overall, I think a good window for the All Whites and very good signs heading into next year's FIFA World Cup. So who was my standout player in this international window? I'm going to give a shout out to Max Crocombe. Now, this guy at 32 years of age, you think as the goalkeeper, why don't you start Alex Poulsen as your first choice keeper? 22 years of age, part of AFC Bournemouth, and of course Bournemouth having an impressive season in the Premier League just gone, and of course likely to go back out on loan to Scottish Premier side Hibernian next season, and of course another one of Bill Foley's owned clubs as well, and of course having that standout season with Auckland FC in the A-League. You thought maybe you'd look towards him, the future, your first choice keeper, but Max Crocombe currently the #1 keeper, playing, of course, in the English Championship, the second tier for Burton Albion, and in fact, Burton Albion only just surviving being relegated. They finished 20th in the Championship, the season just gone. So, indeed, obviously, him being the first choice keeper, put in some great performances, looked very solid between the posts, made some solid saves, and just looked really comfortable and confident in goal. And I guess it's probably the first time in a while we've really seen an all-white #1 actually look really comfortable in goal. I feel like, the last few keepers we've had, I think more recently, and Michael Wood, he just, was having those games where he just wasn't really able to, capitalise on mistakes and just, I think, made too many mistakes. But for Matt Crocombe, sorry, I should say, he's looking very comfortable in goal, very comfortable and just very solid. And I feel like a very decent choice for the All Whites to keep at #1 as well. And of course, playing in a competitive league in the Championship as well is great for him as well, because very much, those lower leagues in the league, particularly right below the English Premier League, the top step in world football and English football, I think is a great sign that, you're getting those competitive minutes. And of course, great for him that's going to be back playing in the Championship next season, considering how Burton Albion performed in the regular season, just gone. But yes, Matt Crocombe, a great performance from him in this international window. Here's my standout player for this Canadian Shield, a good performance from a 32-year-old goalkeeper. So what's next for the All Whites? Well, as I said, they're not back into action until the end of the year, well, towards the end of the year, I should say, rather. They're playing in October. They'll be taking on the 38th ranked Norway in Oslo, the capital of Norway. Now, Norway, of course, have just been going through their World Cup qualification process at the moment. Recently, actually just beat Italy, the other day, 3-0, and of course, both stars of, Erling Haaland. Everyone, of course, knows Erling Haaland, and of course, midfielder Martin Ødegaard of Arsenal. So they've got some pretty decent players in this Norwegian team. But I think for the All Whites, based on the recent performances in this Canadian Shield, I believe they can really give Norway a massive headache. Yes, Norway will have home advantage. It'll be towards the end of the year, so of course, still a wee while away before, this match. But at the same time, I feel like if you, look at the All Whites' performances against these highly ranked opponents, and of course, Norway being ranked lower, of course, than Ukraine, and of course, the All Whites only lost them by 1 goal. I still believe the All Whites can get at least a draw out of it, if not maybe scrape a win past Norway. So that's next for the All Whites. Not back into action until the towards the end of the year in October. They'll play Norway in a one-off friendly in Oslo, of course, the capital city of Norway, and that isn't until October. So that's what's next for the All Whites, and I think promising signs for that game coming up, particularly how they went in this Canadian Shield. So that's going to be it for me. Obviously, I know I didn't really actually preview this tournament. That's because, of course, with Super Rugby and all that, I was very much focusing on that. But I knew I had to review this Canadian Shield tournament. Obviously, a big, couple of games for the All Whites, playing quite highly ranked, well-recognised teams in Europe and certainly, and of course, Africa as well with Ivory Coast. And I think overall, great performance from the All Whites. I think a lot of people should be very optimistic of what this All White side can do come this time next year when the 2026 FIFA World Cup kicks off. As I said, today, next year, is when the tournament officially starts. And indeed for the All Whites, and of course there's Norway friendly coming up as well, another big opponent in the FIFA rankings. It's really great for the All Whites and New Zealand football to be getting these matches against teams that are very much highly likely going to qualify for the World Cup, who they could very much be drawn to play in the group stage, and possibly even looking hindsight into the knockout stages if they do that well. But for the All Whites, I think this is a very good sign for them going into next year's FIFA World Cup. So watch out for that next game against Norway. But just very much exciting to see what this All Whites team can do heading into next year's World Cup. That's going to be it for me. Until next time, I'll see you later.